Cloud. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of Shed the Shame. We are super duper excited to have a fabulous guest, Jasmine, with us today, who's the owner and designer of 837, a creative and collaborative studio for change makers. Like, she's legit. You guys need to go look at her stuff, find out what she's about. She is amazing. I'm so excited for her to tell us more. And today we are going to be talking about IUDs. So buckle in. It's going to be awesome.
And hello, this is your co-host, Aljalyn Sperber, founder and CEO of Ladybox, an organic period subscription box. And I guess, I don't know what you call it, but I started the Shed the Shame campaign this year in support of the work that WaterAid does to bring clean water and sanitation to impoverished and marginalized communities in 30 countries across the globe, and to help shed the shame surrounding periods, because there are over 800 million people menstruating each day. So why are we being shy and hiding the fact that we bleed?
No more.
No more.
Like, what do you call it? Like the Shed the Shame, like champion masters of ceremony. Like, we should come up with like a title for the mistress, the Shed the Shame mistress. That's kind of fun.
Or like ministers of shameless menstruation or something like that.
Ooh, that's got a good ring to it. We're gonna workshop that so you guys can vote in the show notes. What do you think that Aljalyn's official title should be called around this campaign? If you don't know me yet, I'm Alex Cole-Frakes, the CEO of The Agenda Period, a planning system and app that helps women and menstruators orient their lives and schedules around their hormonal fluctuations for their maximum impact in their lives and businesses. So we're super duper excited to be here with you today. Thank you for coming back for another shameless episode.
Before we introduce or let Jasmine introduce herself, I just wanted to bring up an interesting bit of news surrounding the menstruation world. Did you know that a design historian, so somebody that follows the history of design, and a museum curator at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston want to start or include menstrual cups as works of art in a museum? What do you think about that, folks?
I'm here for it. That is so cool.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. It's another way to remove taboo, shed shame around periods, and normalizing it, and then finding the beauty in these tools that help us feel dignified as we bleed.
I love that. There's a menstrual or a vagina museum that opened up in the UK, and I'm sure they've got a section on menstrual cups. But I think bringing that here to the US would be fantastic. And yeah, again, just showcasing the ingenuity and brilliance behind these solutions for us, I think is so cool. So I love that piece of news. Woo! Normalization of periods. Awesome. So right off the top, we're going to start with a cycle check-in. We really love talking about where people are at in their cycle and helping us understand. And if you don't know yet, that's totally cool. That's part of the beauty of tracking this information. Even if you are on hormonal birth control or have an IUD, like we're going to talk about today, but just starting to understand how your energy maps to where you're at. I am checking in the follicular phase. So if you feel me coming in hot today with a lot of high intense energy, that is why. I am normally very extroverted, then plus I'm right about to be in ovulation phase. So I'm just hello world. So that is where I'm at today. Aljalyn, what about you? Where are you checking in your cycle?
I'm probably somewhere in the border of follicular and luteal. I had a really good week this week, felt very energized, but I don't know if I'm starting to come down because I was go, go, go all week, or because I'm about to hit that follicular phase of the cycle. I was very aroused this week. So I'm thinking I'm almost, it's about time for that luteal to come knocking on the door.
There you go. Jasmine, anything you'd like to add about your cycle, and then also just like introducing yourself as we are kind of moving into the next part of the pod? Love to hear from you.
Yeah, so thank you for the little intro, Alex and Algelin. So as mentioned before, I'm Jasmine, a graphic designer. So I specialize in brand strategy and identity design for small businesses and change makers. So that's something I'm very passionate about. I love creating and thinking with others. I'm a very collaborative person. And yeah, I think there's space for everybody at the table to win. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And then as far as my cycle, I actually don't have a little check-in for you. I don't have one in the traditional sense, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, I actually don't have a cycle. I don't have a period. And I'm not able, I'm learning so much through you guys. This was not a thing for me, or I wasn't aware about my cycle and everything there is to know until recently. But I mean, I don't have one, and I haven't had one for quite some time, but I wish I was just more knowledgeable and the information was more accessible to me, 10 plus years ago. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because that's something when like we talk about a lot in the cycle reintroduction group, is feel like, well, I don't have a period, so I don't have a cycle. And we're like, oh, well, they're like, we're still in all these hormonal fluctuations. We're still like somewhere within this rhythm, but because it's not talked about and the education is hugely lacking, we just have no idea. So I love that you bring that up. And that is definitely something we hope to keep in all of our separate ways, like bringing light to the conversation, making the information easier for people, because it's really total BS that we're kept in the dark about this. So thank you for sharing that with us today. That's awesome.
Oh, I'm looking forward to doing more research now, because like, although I don't shed anything or bleed at all, doesn't mean I'm not going through certain phases. So, and I'm aware of that. It's just like, I didn't know there were names for it. So
Yeah. and yeah, that's totally fine. So, knowing that you have an IUD, I myself have an IUD. I have the Mirena. It's almost time for me to like remove it, and I'm actually planning to remove it permanently. But tell us about your IUD, Jasmine.
yeah, so I also have Mirena. So I got it inserted 6 weeks after my son was born. So I do have an 11-year-old. And I got the IUD after he was born, because I was like, I don't want any more kids. And I just don't want to have to go through the hassle of remembering to take a pill, because I'm terrible. So I was like, well, this seems fine. I don't have to worry about it for 5 years. And I think because I had my son so young or younger, I had him at 20, which is still fairly young, that nothing was really explained to me. So I wasn't aware that my period would stop, or it could stop once I had the IUD. So, I got it inserted. A couple weeks later, you go back to get it checked and make sure everything's good. And I was like, hey, I don't have a period yet. She's like, oh, that's totally normal. It's fine. And, I'm 30, I'll be 32 soon. So like, up until I haven't had a period in over 10 years. And, I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have, it's fine with it. But I just wish information as far as like, a little bit more knowledge about my body, what's not normal. Because prior to my IUD, so that was another reason why I wanted to get on birth control, was to reduce the amount of pain that I was in. So, and then I also too, I think this will be my last IUD for good as well.
Yeah, I think thank you for sharing that. I think that's really common for people, is like wanting some solutions to reduce the pain. And because providers aren't always knowledgeable about other methods to reduce that. Like I've been learning about some great holistic products like Jasmine. I was actually just talking to Alison about this before we got started, like a really great way to reduce some of that pain and inflammation. But like a lot of times hormonal birth control can be kind of offered as that maybe band-aid solution, because there's not enough information necessarily spread again about like what's ways that we can deal with this besides just getting on birth control? And I also just wanted to set the stage for people who may not know what an IUD is. It's an intrauterine device. So there are two different kinds. There's the hormonal, Mirena. I was on it. I think that's the one, Algernon, you said you were on.
Yep.
Jasmine, were you on Mirena, or were you on the other, the non-hormonal? Were you on the Mirena?
I'm on Mirena.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most common. The other one is, and so that one works by, they all kind of work by like killing sperm that can go up into the vaginal canal. And there's also some hormones, low dose of hormones that are released with Mirena. So it typically, it stops ovulation for most people. So then they don't have a period. For me, when I was on Mirena, I still had a period every 28 days. So regular as the moon. So just like clockwork. I was like, cool. So I kept ovulating when I was on the Mirena, and I think that happens for about 3 to 5% of people who have that one. And then the other one is the copper IUD, which is non-hormonally based, but some people have noticed potentially having some issues with inflammation or just a reaction to having that material in your body, because we really aren't, made with copper just like floating around in our uterus. So that can cause some problems for folks in that way. So I just wanted to also kind of catch anyone up to speed if they don't know what those are, maybe haven't heard of them. But there is some great benefit of like not having to remember to take the pill every day. I think that was definitely one of the reasons I was drawn to that option.
One interesting fact about the copper IUD that I read a couple years back was the copper was used or is used because it apparently can take the head off of the sperm and then like just stop them from swimming up in, through the uterus, through the cervix, through the uterus. And so that's why they, decided, oh, let's do this with the copper. So I'm like, well, that is violent. It was very violent. And it was I don't know if it was true, but I know I read it off of like some health website, and I was like, oh, okay, that is why they chose copper for that IUD.
Also, like, who do you think discovered that? Like, was someone like putting
like Trojans and like horses and like back in the Roman days of the Colosseum, and they're just like
that's exactly what is in my head too. Also, like, what scientist's job was like to put a bunch of sperm into a petri dish and then like put a bunch of other shit into it until they figured out like what would murder the sperm? Like whose job was it to watch sperm get murdered like over and over again? I'm really curious. If you know, listening to this, you can help us out. If you can trace the sperm murder history, that would be very interesting to me. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So IUDs. Whoa. I'm really curious, like, what have you noticed since having an IUD? What's your experience been? Like, there's that positive benefit of controlling your pregnancy journey, but I'm curious, have you noticed anything positively or negatively around having an IUD?
Yeah, I think, so the funny thing is, I don't know. I don't know. I have noticed as I've gotten older, there's certain changes that I've noticed in my body. So like, I was never one, not to brag, but I was never one to struggle with acne. Like during puberty or middle school, high school, I never had an acne problem. But like, I swear when 27 hit, 28, I don't know what happened. My face was just like, hi, I'm here. Like, it was so bad. So I dealt with like cystic acne, as an adult. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the IUD and having it, back to back, because I'm on my third IUD, right? And they're I've had them back to back, like consecutively. So I don't know if my body just, freaked out. I don't know if it's because of that. And I've had other like, abdominal pains as well, but I can't definitively say that it's IUD based or not. It could be other health issues. But as far as that, yeah, any changes regarding the IUD or body wise, I don't know. Like, I can't confirm or deny.
I loved your humble brag about acne, and I was like, that's so cute for you. My face was a disaster. Like, oh man, yeah. That's super interesting observation. So I wonder, if you're listening in, what you've noticed about your own IUD. I think what's like a little concerning to me is that it does stop ovulation, and like the period isn't necessarily the most important part, but ovulation is pretty important. And those are some of the things like I wish we had better or different variety of options for how we can control pregnancy, because I waited to have, I didn't have kids until I was 29. Also humble brag, just kidding. But part of that was like having a really early access to birth control, which I'm really happy for. But just like knowing like what was this doing to my body or in my body for that decade that I was on it before I had kids. It's just like, I just feel like we don't have enough information. And that's the thing that kind of bums me out.
Yeah, like even with in the beginning of when I had in the beginning of having my IUD, I had like all the symptoms that you could, or side effects that you could have, especially like major sensitivity to light. So I would get headaches, and then like really bad cramps. I spotted for probably like a year straight. So, you know, sexual activity was interesting during that year, but it was like, that was the year that I really had to use CBD to help cope with any period related pains, because it was so bad. And, you know, back then I wasn't informed enough about my cycle to know like about seed cycling to help with it, or to like, and I was too proud to use a hot water bottle. I was just like, yeah, whatever, I can, you know, get through it. And then finally I like caved and started using CBD products to help me cope through it. But it's interesting like how much it did change for my body, because prior to, I was having pretty heavy periods, then I was more active again, lost some weight, and then like my cycles started to be more regular. And then I went on the IUD and everything was just like so weird. Like I had all these symptoms, but then I didn't. And then I had spotting for a year. And then after that, I didn't have any withdrawal. And now I just like, I can tell when my body is going through changes, but again, it's still weird to not have that proof that like I am going through a cycle, like you do with like shedding. So, and that's why I don't want to have my IUD anymore after like the time is up, because I want to have proof of what my body is going through.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like I had really, because I kept having a period, I had really painful periods, more painful than ever before I had the IUD, because it like I would have cramps around the IUD. And it also made sex really bad. Like, cause I could feel like, you know, depending on the position, I could like definitely feel it like poking around in there, like stabbing my uterus, because like any bump on the cervix would like bump the whole setup, and it was terrible. Have either of you noticed or anything around sex with an IUD, like any negative side effects or consequences?
Jasmine, I'll let you go first if you have something to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say two things. So circling back to the water bottle, when I did have a period, or like when I was actually shedding, the 2-liter water bottles is my thing. Like I just fill it up with hot water. But I have noticed it. So I'm celibate now, but prior to me making that choice, which is another reason why I'm like, I don't need the IUD because I'm not having sex. So, but prior to making that decision, I did notice that. So it was painful, you know, having sex, certain positions. You know, like I said, I'm on my third one. So depending if they clip the strings, you know, I think one time they clipped them too short, and like I couldn't find it, and I was like, is it gone? Like, what's going on? But yeah, I have experienced that, just like painful sex sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, same. My partner and I, like, we have to definitely be more mindful of when my cervix is lower, because yeah, you can definitely feel it.
Yeah. So like these things are, again, like great, like they really can be really supportive, can help us, can make a lot of or maintain control, but there are all these things, like my doctor was never like, sex may suck with the like she never told me that. Like there's like a lot of things this may mess with your libido and make you not even want to have sex. Like then what's the point of birth control controlling my pregnancy?
Yes.
Like,
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. Yes, I don't even have the desire, even if I wasn't celibate. I don't necessarily have that desire as much as I did before, which is weird. Until my sister has an IUD as well, and we were talking about it, and I was like, light bulb moment. What? Like, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, they don't tell you all everything, or if they do, it's like you forget. And I feel like that's something that should be mentioned more, because I get checked, every year. And I know a lot of people don't. But if you are going every year, I think it's a good reminder, like now, to ask those questions. So I'm gonna put that on my to-do list.
Yeah, so you don't have to like always think about like all the medical stuff that when you go in for your appointment, although it is important to remember to ask those questions related to like medical, but also the human side of things. That's totally okay to ask more of those lifestyle questions to your medical care provider, practitioner. Don't be afraid to ask the questions that you have, because otherwise, like, how are you going to know? And it's true, knowledge is power, and knowledge gives you that peace of mind, which helps for your well-being.
Yeah. And if your provider is uncomfortable or doesn't bring that stuff up, like find a podcast like Shed the Shame, or like find some people that you can like in your circle that you can talk to, because I think again, we just don't bring these things up because women don't talk about sex and women don't talk about this kind of blah, 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 right? So finding those pockets where you can get those questions answered, because it totally matters. Awesome. Jasmine, what is one way you can show that you are period proud?
One way I can, I think just talking about it. Like, I'm not very embarrassed about really anything. Like, you can ask me whatever you want and I'll answer it. I'll be honest, like I'll be like, I don't know. Like, I didn't know about the terminology you guys mentioned before on, at what point are you guys in your cycle? I still have no idea, but that's something for me to, learn about after this. So I think just, being open to conversations and supporting others who are actually going through that shedding process, and just like a traditional or normal period, what that looks like. And then just providing resources too. So like, I'm not the most knowledgeable person, obviously, in this topic, but I have shared, resources to my other peers and friends who need it. So
awesome. If you want, I know that you're a busy solo mom, making that money flow, but if you want and you have time, I found such empowerment by reading the book Period Power by Maisie Hill. She was so informative and insightful about like the cycle, and even talks about like the phases as seasons, so that way it's like easier to like absorb that information that you're learning about each phase.
It's a great
I
one.
will write that down. Love a good book.
Yeah. But speaking of like having time, how do you practice self-care? I mean, you're a busy lady, a busy mama. How do you get that self-care time in there?
That's a good question. I don't. I'm learning. I'm learning to do that more so now, and it's more urgent for me to do so now. I think I was really good at it when I was in corporate. Even though it did stress me out, but working a corporate job and then like knowing I'm only here Monday through Friday, but when you work for yourself, like I do have the capability and capacity to work all night and all day and every day if I wanted to, but it doesn't mean I have to. So I think taking time off and being unapologetic about it and just prioritizing me is something that I'm actually starting to do now. So like I booked a vacation in August, so that will be happening. But just finding little moments that matter to me. So, going outside, reading a book, and kind of like really disconnecting. So I'm learning. I'm not the best at it, but I'm learning and finding it very important because I'm reaching burnout.
Oh, I hope you can make it. You can make it, and I hope you have like the most amazing vacation when you get there.
Thanks.
Hey, yes, sending you so much spaciousness, and like that's like I think the hope for us all. We're expected. I think there's an additional layer of pressure on moms because there's so much stigma around like, oh, you can't be a good mom and be good at your job. So we end up doing way more and pushing those boundaries and that burnout. Like I had faced some really interesting questions from potential investors when they found out I was pregnant. And it's just like, this is not a question you would ask me if I had a penis. So I do not appreciate this at all, because like we just know like that like men are gonna like it's gonna work out and they're just gonna like figure it out, but we don't. Or like, well, someone else will watch their children. We would never expect that they're going to be doing that. Like, obviously, that's what their lady is for, right? So it's just so annoying, that extra pressure. So sending you some spaciousness, and again, excited for your vacation, cheering you on. That's awesome. I know you had mentioned not really kind of knowing where you're at, but I'm curious if you noticed any changes during the month for your performance, and maybe you haven't tracked it, but like that sometimes feel things easier, or sometimes things feel more challenging, throughout the month, even if it's the same kind of task that you're working on.
Yeah, I do notice it. I don't track it. I probably should. But I also am probably like 99% sure I also have ADHD. So like, there's just like, as an adult, like there's certain challenges, like that is very challenging for me sometimes, just sitting down and focusing. And also like my stress level. So like include all those factors. It's hard, but I do think tracking it could be beneficial. But there are certain times during the month where I'm probably a little bit more tired than normal. Like tired, just have no motivation. But that could be a number of things. But I think tracking it could be pretty beneficial for me.
You have to come back and let us know if you find anything out. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And hopefully if you have an opportunity, Jasmine, like checking out the Agenda Period app, that might even be helpful because that's what it's made for. But okay, so I have super duper enjoyed this conversation, learning more about you, hearing more about the personal you, Jasmine, because you and I have like worked together for over a year on fun design work. But where can people learn more about you? Where can they find you and your fun Instagram stories that you like to share?
Oh man. So you can find me at 837.co, so co. That's my website. But my Instagram handle is also 837 or at 837. But the more personal one, I guess I'll go ahead and put it out here. That's like
You don't have to.
Okay, yeah, no, I will. It's fine. People seem to enjoy my off the cuff random daily met.
They're amazing. They're amazing. They bring such joy to my day.
Everybody says that it's hilarious, and I'm like, I'm literally just showing you everything that goes wrong. But my personal Instagram is _Jasmine, so JASMINE.Ashley. And that's my personal Instagram. So you can find me at those two.
If you want to see her, like making boba tea or like iced coffee at home, or just like sharing random things. I love it when she's like, you guys. So check her out when you have the time. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for being on the Shed the Shame podcast. For just as a reminder, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. If you would like to learn more about the Shed the Shame campaign that we're doing, check out shedtheshame.co. We have water bottles for purchase that, and the proceeds go towards WaterAid to help support the work that they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We will see you next time, and have a great week and keep shedding the shame. Thanks, everybody. Woohoo!